The purpose of a pinch pot is to create a small bowl or a round base. You need to write this down now on your worksheet. This is an example of a finished pinch pot. Let's take a look at the inside here, as well as the sides. So that's our goal. Now, the steps. Alright, step number 1, we have our wedged piece of clay here and we need to pat that into a ball. You want it nice and round and not flat. Some students might find it helpful to make a little bit of a cylinder or barrel type shape like this. Step 2, you need to push your thumb down through the ball of clay to make a hole that does not go all the way through the bottom. So it goes down vertically through the piece of clay, but it does not come out through the bottom. Again, that's step number 2. Step number 3, we're going to pinch the sides starting at the bottom. This is really important because if you start at the top, it's going to get too thin and the edges are going to break. So you've got to start at the base of your pot. And you're going to do that by using these fingers on the outside of your pot and your thumb on the inside. Try and feel the thickness. Try and thin that bottom part out first. That's the hardest part, is really getting the bottom thin first. You're gonna want to pinch the top edges first and it's not gonna work out well for you. So we're thinning the bottom part first. Try and get it as even as possible. Now we're going to continue pinching the sides and kind of moving the clay up so that we're making the sides of the clay higher. What I'm doing is keeping these outside fingers still and pulling my thumb up on the inside of the side of the bowl or the pot. Thinning out that inside. Again, see how I'm not making this top edge any thinner. I'm just making that inner portion of the side thinner. It's better to make small adjustments, so I'm making it thinner just a little bit at a time rather than pinching it really hard in one spot and then you end up with a really thin spot and then a really thick spot and it's hard to even everything out. If you do just little motions, that's going to help you out. Now, particularly if we're going to be adding coils to the top of this pinch pot, I'm going to want to make sure that it's about the thickness of my pinky finger on edge. So right now it's a little bit thick. You can see how the clay is a little bit thicker than my pinky finger, so I'm going to want to keep thinning it out until I've got about 1/2 inch thickness. I'm just constantly evening things out, making small pinches to make the sides as even as possible, getting it down to 1/2 inch. About the thickness of your pinky. Don't make it too thin, particularly if you're adding coils to the top, because you're going to want a nice platform to add those coils to. Okay. Kind of tapping it on the table to make the bottom a little bit flatter so that it stands nice and steady. Smooth that out. Step number 5 is to smooth out this edge. You can see how the clay has dried a little bit on the edge here, so we're going to add a little bit of water. And you can see that I've been using this and it has some clay in it, so it's a little cloudy. But that is just fine. Now I'm not using enough water that there's water collecting in the cup, just barely wetting it to smooth out any of those cracks. Again, this is step number 5, using that little bit of water to smooth out the cracks. This is going to be especially important if you're not adding coils, if the coil pot is in fact the finished product. I can use this to fix any problems that I might be having on the sides of the pot as well. So you can see right there, just smooth that out. Not really pinching at this point, not making the walls any thinner than they already are, just smoothing out any of those cracks where the clay has begun to dry. Usually most of them are going to be right around that top edge. Now notice that I only dipped my fingers in the water twice. I really don't need too much water. If you get too much water, the whole thing is going to fall apart and be really difficult to work with, because all the little clay particles, which are essentially mud, are just going to disintegrate and fall apart. So there's our finished pinch pot. This would be a great base for a vase if we were to build up with the coils.